Welcome to Lighten Up TV, evolutionary wellness for the body, mind, and spirit. We are 3 in 1 and 1 in 3. We are body, mind, and spirit. Harmonizing these 3 aspects of our being is the key to achieving total well-being. Integration is the pathway to mental, physical, and spiritual harmony, and the only way to progress on our evolutionary journey. In this series, our guest experts will show you how to purify your body, liberate your mind, and ignite your creative spirit. Are you ready to lighten up?
Doesn't that feel good? Yes. Don't ever let your ego tell you that you are anything less than perfect, because you are all that and more.
It's time to lighten up. Hello and welcome to Lighten Up TV. I'm so delighted to have our guest, Danielle Rama Hoffman, here on the show today. Danielle is an ancient wisdom keeper, as well as a divine transmitter, a member of the lineage of Thoth, and also a leader in the shift into unity consciousness. She is the author of 3 beautiful books, really a light trilogy: The Temples of Light, The Councils of Light, and her most recent book is The Tablets of Light. And I've truly enjoyed all 3 books, and it's really an honor and a privilege to introduce Danielle Rama Hoffman. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm delighted and love how you said a light trilogy, because it really is a light trilogy. I didn't plan it that way. I didn't plan it at all, but it was really that. Yeah, it is a light trilogy.
So often book series turn into trilogies. I have my own trilogy, which is called the Up Trilogy, which is Wake Up, Rise Up, and Lighten Up. But I was originally shown one 30-day book, and it seemed so overwhelming, I broke it down into 3 10-day books. So sometimes it's better to break things into, a series, but we both know that 3 is a divine number, so it's a trinity.
Yes, yes. And following the energy is really how I love to live. And so as we're following the energy, we don't always have the full picture as to where it's headed, but each step is a part of the hologram along the way.
Yes, and speaking of holograms, that is a wonderful analogy, because each book is sort of a resemblance of the whole, just like a hologram would be. Yes, so my dear, I would like to get started by just reflecting on how at the age of 9, you were called to participate in really a horseback riding camp, and it turned into really an awakening and a connection at a young age, and the owners of that horseback riding camp became an integral part of your life and your divine calling.
Yes, yes. And that connection as well with the horses, because horses really have this natural way of almost telepathically communicating. And so I think that being with the horses really supported me in having a way of communicating and having a response back that I wasn't necessarily noticing when I was speaking with other individuals. So yeah, the horses were very grounding. And then at the age of 9 at this horseback riding camp, I had lightning go through me, and then again at 17. And then the women that owned the camp, when I was, I think, 24, ended up becoming my Reiki masters. And then that's also where I met Nikki Scully and really had my first connection to a guide. It was a workshop with Sekhmet, and I'd been a massage therapist and a counselor and, Reiki master all along the way. And yet the first time I met Sekhmet was just really like this reclaiming of an ancient connection to Egypt. And then that's where I met Thoth, or as he says, as he comes through a divine transmission, Thoth, the Egyptian god of infinite knowledge. And he's really been a primary partner for me. And really also the origin or the connection for the books and all that's come through that lineage.
Yes, and I like how you talk about it as sort of a reunion or a remembering of your lifetimes in Egypt, and how your book Temples of Light go to the various temples throughout Egypt, and then ultimately leading tours to Egypt. So a really powerful connection there. And I would love to hear what it felt like the first time that you arrived in Egypt.
Yeah, it was really, it's so interesting because I didn't really have a connection to Egypt as a child or think about it. And so like it wasn't there, and then it was there, and then it was there really strongly. And I remember that we went to watch the Sufi dancers, spinning, 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 spinning. And after leaving the Sufi dancers and riding in the bus, going back to the hotel, I really saw with my open eyes Thoth sitting in the back of the bus. And it was so it freaked me out because I'd seen him in my mind's eye. And I even asked Anubis, the jackal-headed god, opener of the way, to kind of check his ID, because I recognized the signature energy, but it was so such an intense awakening. And yeah, being in Egypt was the first time, and every time really amazing. I would have memories of kind of underneath the temples or places that weren't really open. And sometimes too, I would go and I'd go into a temple and I'd be like, I didn't really feel a lot. But then when I'd go back home, some of those temples that were kind of neutral or calm, then I would have a really strong connection to the temple. And I remember Thoth asking me and the temples, that there was a lot of information about the pantheon and the gods and goddesses, and yet there really wasn't that much about the temples. And I think the temples are such a beautiful example of evolution, because a temple is consecrated and dedicated for a certain aspect, and then maybe it's destroyed or added on to, yet the seed is always built upon those previous layers. So I think also our, what we would call our past lives, build upon one another. And so the Temples of Light really is a journey into the heart wisdom teachings of each of the temples. And that was cool. It was kind of like using that same capacity that I learned with the horses to communicate without words, to then be communicating to the essence of the temples of light.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about the ascension spiral in your book, and it's a heart expansion and then sort of an inner temple. And I appreciated those references, because certainly it starts with expanding, but then it's also, centering into your own heart space and your own inner temple. And I also feel a powerful connection to Egypt, and I actually have a little statue of
Oh, yeah, we're going to get our statues out here. Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's beautiful. Yes. And was drawn to the, emerald tablets a few years ago, and really, myself felt a past life in Egypt really come to the surface and the forefront for me through meditation, and then a connection to Isis and Hathor and Sekhmet. And so when I saw your book, Temples of Light, a couple of years ago, I snatched it up and just have so enjoyed the virtual journey, through Egypt, and at each one of these temples having this really strong connection and spiritual experience. You really help the reader feel into the spiritual essence of each of the temples. And then, of course, you do a practice at each of the temples. So thank you for offering your readers a virtual journey into Egypt and a spiritual activation at each of the temples. That's so powerful. Can you tell me how you were inspired to create that?
Yes, well, really it was the request as well from the temples and from Thoth, and to really be connecting with each of the temples along the Nile, and that the temples are really built as a reflection of the cosmos, and sometimes the Nile is referred to as like the Milky Way, and that the story, as you know, of Isis and Osiris being dismembered, like really succinctly the story, into 14 different parts, and then Isis building a temple at each place. And so it's really this journey along the Nile, a journey of remembering ourselves, and remembering ourselves as well, as you spoke about the ascension spiral. And I think that was an important point that you're bringing forward, because to me it is this ascension descension spiral that we need to take all of us with us. And so when I first started, meditating, I don't know, 30 years ago or 25 years ago or something like that, there was a lot of kind of going out of the body. And then for me, it was so important to go within, and the Emerald Tablets as well talk about that, as above, so below, as within, so without. Yet that recognition of that we have everything within us, and that for me as well, and I think this is something you talk about too, that there was this time where I was really called to get my body online and move and exercise, and rather than going out there, really going deep within. And then there's a deeper connection to source consciousness. And so, I think the book also really supports with that ascension descension spiral, and ensuring that as we evolve in our consciousness, that we're bringing all of us along. And it's a remembering that it can be quite natural or innate as well.
Yes, absolutely. I so appreciate that, and a reflection on Egypt as well, with sort of the symbology around Osiris being dismembered and the 14 temples erected so that he can be remembered, and so that we can remember. And that's such a powerful symbology. And the Temple of Saqqara has always had such a powerful resonance for me, and that's really the temple of sacred symbology.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that the Temple of Saqqara is really a beautiful, and it's unlike, they're all unique, but it's unlike the other temples of really these columns of walking through, and that the initiate as well, there may have been these initiations where it was in the dark, and finding the way in the dark, and walking through the columns, like opening up the veils of the inner sight. And then there's just these beautiful chambers underground that have the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or Coming Forth by Light, the hieroglyphs on the walls. And that really is a powerful connection to be awakening that sacred symbology, and our capacity to be able to be looking at the synchronicities of our life, and see what those symbols are, to see things like in the hieroglyphs. It's multidimensional. It's not just words like we have in our language, although words, as well as they're scribed and connected to energy, can be in divine wholeness. And so really that capacity to awaken our sacred symbology, to be able to see the magic, the synchronicities, and open to that inner sight. And there's so much. I think that, I just remember being with groups and looking at the temple walls, and there's pictures as well in the Temples of Light book, in addition to like the audio CD of some of the meditations, that the pictures can spark a remembering or an awakening of capacities that we have that are quite natural, that may have been dormant or awakening. Like I remember before I had my Reiki training, I had a lot of awakening happening, but it was very confusing to me. Even though I was doing massage, I didn't really have a sense of like how to turn on the energy or how to turn off the energy. And so having context sometimes or tools can be really supportive during our awakening process, even though it's unique. Like everyone has their own pathway. We're each unique in that journey. Yet having some context or some additional capacities that come online can be really supportive.
Yes, I really like how you sort of use light, color, and sound, to activate all of the multidimensional aspects of your readers and viewers, in essence. So you use the YouTubes as a powerful audio visual way to connect with you and to really tune into those divine transmissions. And then, of course, your books and the imagery in them, as well as all of the words. And I just think it's such a powerful way to really engage all of the senses. And I am particularly drawn to the multidimensionality that you speak of, and reuniting those multidimensional aspects of ourselves. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, that's beautiful as well. For there is this evolution in consciousness, as there's much awareness of, and that it is that shift from primarily experiencing ourselves through the filters of our body, mind, and emotions, to be experiencing ourselves as well with those filters, yet from a multidimensional level. So often the Council of Light often speak about the multidimensionality of, like, if we are a building, that we have many stories of the building, and that we can also be communicating, receiving, and transmitting multidimensionally. And so that and to not also be stopping how we're communicating based on who's around us and what dimensions they may be communicating from. And it's not like having access to more dimensions is better or worse than somebody who's not having access to the same amount of dimensions, because it's really kind of that perfect fit for each of us. And so for some, and there's a lot of talk about the fifth dimension, the fourth dimension, the third dimension, and yet for some it may be the 18th dimension, or like in the Temples of Light book, there's a meditation to the Temple of Abydos and the raising of the Djed, and how there are 33 bones in the spinal column, and this reflection of like the 33 dimensions. Or in the work that's currently been coming through Thoth, the Divine Light activation sequence, there are these 24 dimensions, and each dimension has different aspects. And so as we're living more multidimensionally, we're also resourced, remembered, and able to be communicating in interdimensional ways. And so that can look very different for individuals. And that's also, as you're referring to, the language of light that can come through, that's also a form of multidimensional communication. So to me, it's really awakening to our divine selves, that we are, from my perspective and what Thoth and the Council of Light say as well, that we are beings of light incarnate, and we're awakening to that divine wholeness. And as we're living more multidimensionally, then that also supports that process. And again, it's not that the third dimension ceases to exist, like everything is in wholeness. And yet it's not the separation of flipping back from this emotion or this thought or this body thing. It's more of the alignment and the wholeness, and then being plugged into a wider perspective. So I know there's a lot of conversations about the evolution of consciousness, the shift from separation into unity consciousness. And I know that for me, years ago, I thought it might feel like a certain way or look like a certain way. And it's continued to surprise me, because it's still like I'll have moments of separation consciousness, and yet there's a greater level of being resourced, that it's like putting food coloring into a thimble if there's fear or slower vibration. And then as we're in more unity consciousness or living more multidimensionally, that those same few drops of food coloring of fear or whatever the slower vibration is in the ocean, it's much more diluted. It's back in the wholeness, back in the oneness, back in the source from which it came. So there's a lot that could be shared about multidimensionality, but what I'm sensing for this particular group that's connected to this conversation is also a real freedom to not to open up to communicating however it is that you communicate. You know, I remember when I was doing massage years ago, that there was really a lot of encouragement to kind of mainstream what it was that I did and talked about the benefits, and like it wasn't really who I was. And so the more kind of quote unquote out there, or just using the language that comes normally to me, that's also enhanced my signature essence and visibility and contribution. And so I see that a lot with others, and that's what's coming up. Like anywhere we might have hidden or not fully expressed because we thought somebody wouldn't understand, that from a multidimensional level, we can be expressing without contorting or distorting or shifting, like really the authentic voice. And so what you might be transmitting from the 8th dimension would have a different quality or language than what you might be transmitting from the 3rd or the 5th or the 20th dimension. So that was a lot there in a compact way, but that's what I would say about multidimensional living.
Oh, it was a beautiful answer, Danielle, and I just got so many visuals that were powerful and that resonated with me regarding wholeness. We had talked about, the past lives sort of being layered one upon the other in a sense of wholeness, where they're all sort of influencing each other and bleeding through. And so that feels the same way to me with sort of multidimensionality, that all these different multidimensional aspects of ourselves are also always layered and accessible, and they influence one another. And the more that we can connect into those multidimensional aspects, the more that we become more whole, and also that would in turn raise our vibrational frequency, I would imagine, as you tune into the higher dimensional aspects of yourself.
Yes, and that also can be an aspect of it, that as we increase our vibration, then the slower vibrations come up to the surface to be included in the oneness or in the wholeness. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that, like, it's one thing to kind of have an idea of, well, what is living in unity consciousness, or how is the journey into having more and more moments of living in unity consciousness, and then the experience of it. And so that's the other thing that's coming to me to say, is that to not stop for someone as you're on your journey and you're noticing that there may be more moments or an intensity or slower vibrations are coming up, that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong, that it can simply be a part of the process, and to allow the energy to keep moving, just like the pond turns over as it's cleaning itself, as the mud comes to the surface. And so the higher vibrations also, from my experience, include those slower vibrations, because they're not separate anymore. They're coming into the oneness, into the wholeness. And yet, of course, we have our consciousness, our capacity to focus on what it is that we want to be focusing on, that all that there is exists in each and every moment. So bliss is in each and every moment. And that is also retraining, because the mind may have a habit of looking for what's not going well, or having a hypervigilance or control or those kinds of things, and using the same strength of the mind yet to be focusing on, well, what is already in alignment, what is going well, looking to enhance that, and not ignoring, because I think that I also saw that, with The Secret and those kinds of things as it came out, that then people were afraid to say that they were having a slower vibrational thing. And so they stopped talking about it, but it was still in their vibration. So not to ignore what's going on. In the Counts of Life book, they talk about like having, if you're a director of a play and you're having a strong, slower vibrational emotion, just like to be on the stage and play it full out. But like for 5 seconds, not necessarily for 5 days.
Yes, I so appreciate how you transform letting go into integrating. And you talked about in one of your YouTube presentations that we've spent so much time, trying to clear and let go of these aspects of our life experience, as if they're bad and they don't belong and we need to get rid of them. And I resonated so powerfully. It was really transformational for me personally, to integrate all of myself, all of my life experiences, past lives included, everything I've ever said and done and felt, integrating it into the wholeness of who I am, rather than thinking I need to get rid of things about my life experience or things about myself or my personality. So thank you so much for that. I really want to convey that to the audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just reading in the Tablets of Light before we connected the chapter about the ring of inclusion and the meditation of really including all of those repetitive patterns or distractions and into the ring of inclusion. And for me, that was also such a powerful shift from the Council of Light, that there was so much focus a few decades ago of releasing and letting go, and my experience is that it like would release and then it would come back and then release and come back, and really seeing that it's all energy, and that as we're in this heart center, in this vibration, love includes all that there is, and from that resourceness, that as we're the ocean and we're including those slower vibrations or the aspects of us that we may judge as good or bad, then they're a part of the wholeness. And that's also the disintegration or the reintegration of thinking so much separation or feeling so much separation to really being in that unity. There's one transmission where Toth talks about preferring the unpreferred. And that I know for myself, and I've seen it a lot for others, like we can go through the exact same experience, and sometimes we may think it's preferred, and sometimes we might think it's unpreferred. And so that's also why there's so much focus on the internal landscape and having a greater inner connection to ourselves, and that can create a sense of equanimity, that we're not like flowing in the wind based on what's going on around us, yet really able to stay connected from that internal connection. And I'm feeling the team starting to come in. They've been here, but they're
yes, and
knocking on the door.
Really look forward to the divine transmission. And so we'll just touch on the Tablets of Light briefly. I highly recommend it to all of our audience members. And so let's not give too much of it away, but on sort of in alignment with what you were just saying, positioning and oracular vision, really comes to mind and was an important part for me in the tablets of light that integrates that concept about everything is laying the foundation that positions you to manifest your oracular vision. And I think you really speak to pioneers and innovators and those who have a sincere desire to contribute to the evolution of consciousness. And so it's important, I think, that recognition that everything that has happened up to this point, including this now moment, is positioning us to manifest our oracular vision.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, and the Council of Light book of Manifesting the Deepest Desires of the Soul has a chapter on positioning, and that, just as you shared, that it's the essence of positioning is really that we are, from our signature energy, like this lock and key, and we're positioning ourselves for ourselves, by ourselves, in co-creation for those optimal experiences and individuals and now moments. And that was a real game changer for me as well, because there can be so much of a shift of a focus at times of kind of like, well, is this good or bad? Or to really think, okay, this is all, it all has purpose. And it doesn't mean that we don't continue to evolve or desire that things shift, or sometimes it just comes in like shuffling the deck. It's not really there to stay, and the honoring of each and every moment. And the oracular vision, the first chapter in the tablets of light, really speaks to that we each have an oracular vision that we've come in with, and then how it is that we see the world, our unique perspective that enhances the probability that it happens. And so the oracular, like the oracle, and the vision, the mission that we have. And absolutely that there's that pioneering, that innovation, and then it's kind of like unpacking what our oracular vision is, especially from my perspective that there's another evolutionary stage that we're in. So we may have been carrying consciousness throughout this incarnation thus far that's been in a dormant state, that now really is the time for it to awaken, and for us all each, if we're choosing to bring our part of the equation. And there's so many beautiful analogies in the tablets of light that Tove talks about, of like, if we're going on a picnic, and there's 25 of us going on the picnic, and we've been carrying a part of what's going to be that picnic in our backpack, but maybe alone it didn't really make sense. And yet when we unpack it and put it all on the altar, then there's a great awareness of how it makes sense as a part of a larger sequence, or this shift into co-creation, collaboration, and really that we're moving together through this evolution of consciousness.
At this time, I would love to invite you to share a divine transmission from our beloved Thoth.
Yes, I'd love to. And just to add in that there really is this divine partnership with beings of light and light, as beings of light incarnate, that is a possibility. And so like meeting your unique council of light and having a greater connection to the guides or your team can really be a life enhancing experience, and that it really is a co-creation and a divine partnership, eye to eye, peer to peer, divine to divine. So as I'm bringing in Thoth and the Council of Light, inviting you each to tune into your unique essence, your signature energy, and also your free will and conscious choice, that you're choosing what's yours to be and do and have. Hello, dear ones. It is I, Toph, that is moving more into the forefront of this divine transmission with an expanded council of light. And the expanded council of light is coming forward, for there is a certain synergy that you each may have to particular council of light beings. And that as this transmission and this conversation is a hologram, you may have a sensation that there is a connection to a certain being of light that is your access point, your line into your unique connection to your essence and you, from our perspective, as a council of light, being of light. So we are gathered, we are delighted to be here, and we're recognizing the variety of energies and the beauty of the variety of energies. For this is one of the aspects of the Earth star that's now possible as there's greater wholeness, that greater uniqueness or individuality can stand out. And so that is why as well there is this expanded council of light. So it's a little bit like the sun and the moon and Jupiter and the central sun and Venus and all different galaxies from across the multiverse can be existing, each with their unique universal principles, that the sun is the sun, the moon's the moon, Jupiter's Jupiter, Saturn's Saturn, and that this initial transmission is really the invitation for you each to be vibrating as yourself in all dimensions that you are choosing to be connected to as a way of shining the light of yourself. And anywhere that you may have been trying to be somebody that you're not, or that you've picked up ideas of what your life should be like, we're inviting you each to be putting those down. So in particular, there's a path of the Venus light, council of light, that is also present, that really supports you being your, if you're a strawberry, that you're being your most sun-ripened, succulent, juicy strawberry, full flavored. And that as a strawberry, you're not wishing to be a cantaloupe or an artichoke or anything else. And so that's really how we're opening, that there's quite a vast council of light here, because this conversation, even though it's one conversation, it's multidimensional and it's bespoke for each of you on an individual level. And that again is what was spoken about earlier about the positioning, that there's this thought that life is, especially in the old paradigm of separation consciousness or tribal consciousness, that life is kind of this one size fits all experience, and yet it isn't. Even if you are experiencing similar experiences of those around you in terms of segments, that you may sleep, you may eat, you may laugh, you may cry, you may work, you may play, that even as you're having those segments, you're having those segments. They're absolutely bespoke to you. And this is something that we're having the sense can be really beneficial to highlight in this now moment, and having a greater sense of trust of all that you are creating in your life. If you choose that it's not being done to you, you are a co-creator in it. And then there's a greater efficiency of energy. And so you can move through your days in a way that there's a buoyancy or a lightness. And so we are delighted to explore any direction that you're called, and we'll continue to tap into the group energy and any questions that may be coming as well from the group. So thank you for inviting us here. And are there any questions, Suzanne, that you would bring forward at this time?
Thank you so much for asking that. Yes, an important question that not only I would like to inquire about, but that many of my friends, brothers, and sisters in the spiritual community often discuss is the first part of the question would be about manifestation. So many of us here, and I am in Sedona, Arizona, many of us here in the spiritual community have a desire to bring forth big projects, either to do with, building unity communities. I have a vision for a large acreage here called Spirit Ranch, expanding my conscious media. And seems that we have the ability to envision these things and sort of to create them in the etheric realm. However, bringing them into physical manifestation in the 3D reality can be more of a challenge. So maybe you could expand upon creating it in the ether and manifesting it in the 3D realm.
Yes. And so there's a lot there that you're bringing forward, and each individual is bringing forward their piece of that, or their part of that. And that includes what comes very easy to some that are a part of this conversation right here and right now. For it is an interactive conversation that each individual that is tuning into this conversation by bilocating, being present in spirit, and that will also be tuning in as well to it directly, has gifts, has talents, has aspects that come so easily to you. And you are modeling that or vibrating that, for there are others that are part of this individual group that then that just seems to escape them. Like that is a mastery that they don't have. So there's the conversation that's happening between me, Toth, and the Council of Light, and there are just many conversations that are happening, and that's the potency and the power of coming together in a group among many things. So for some, when you envision something, when you have a vision, it's almost like it's already happened for you. So like it's done. You imagine it, and it's already done. And so that can be a gift, and then it can also be experienced as a challenge, because it's almost like everything that you would experience or quote unquote get out of the actualization of the vision, you get instantly. And so and we know we're saying a lot in a very condensed form. And so there's also the unpacking of what it is that you desire. So for example, if you have this vision to have a large, what you would call a large project, and as you're envisioning it, there's also who it is that you become in the process that draws you to it, or that sensation that when you have it, you'll experience something that you don't currently have in this now moment, and the beauty of it all. So we would say that sometimes when something's not actualizing, it is because there is like it's already happened, and then a part of your system gets a little bit like bored with the idea. And again, that won't apply to everyone. And yet, as you've asked the question, Suzanne, and we're tuning into your energy system as well, that may be an aspect for you. And then there's also an experience like Danielle used to have, where
all of a sudden she'd be like, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Like everywhere she'd look, the sacred symbology was Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. And so there'd be this idea of like, okay, well, that means it's time to get on a plane and go to Hawaii. Yet it actually wasn't about going to Hawaii, because just multidimensionally communicating with the energies of Hawaii was bringing in the energies of what was accessed. So there is like, how to say, we would say that you're not doing anything wrong, that there isn't like a recipe to follow. That is something as well that is being untangled, of this idea of like, well, if you only do X, Y, and Z, then you'll get A, B, and C. So for some of you, it's actually not a big enough project, and it's easier for you to actualize or manifest something that seems very vast, because then you can be all in with it. For others of you, it's like as soon as you connect to the vision, it's almost like you've already done it, and then you want to move on to the next thing. For others of you, the vision is a way to connect to the energies or the essences. So there's a lot of different things going on. And we have the sense that we could offer a transmission through the language of light that could support everyone's amplification of what it is that you're choosing to have in the dimension of what you call the third dimension, because you have chosen to incarnate. You are having your experience right here and right now, and being buoyed with the Venus ray of opulent bliss and abundance really can also enhance the contribution that you're here to make. And so would having some light language that could support the actualization, the manifestation, be a natural next step, or is there more that you'd like to unpack or reflect upon what we just said and didn't say at the same time?
Yes, I would be so delighted to receive the Venus ray of opulent bliss, because I do believe, that the divine energy around the monetary resources to facilitate these larger projects is key. And so I would be very grateful for that transmission at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so we'd invite you each to tune into a vision, a desire that you may have, that you would love to actualize, manifest, experience, hold in your hands. And as you're tuning into that, we would go through a little bit of an unwinding of different aspects. Some with the light language. Sankatina soyatankatana soyatiwa. So as you connect to it, you may have a sense of past disappointments where you wanted to actualize something and it didn't happen. And so a sense of it almost being more painful to hope or to dream or to have a vision than to settle. So this light language stream is to address that, and not that we're doing it to you, we're doing it with you and from the level of your higher self. And this is in response to your asking, in response to your callings. Sankantanu sotoing kamo sana sano tui ankantantina nana sitaya kaya. Now inviting you to, if you choose, remember that you are a creator being. Sankatui sa nano sa tatana satatina. As a creator being, there's no such thing as big or small. Sankatui na nana sita nana soya. each unit of consciousness, whether it's in the multidimensional planes or the higher dimensions, or in the first, second, or third dimension, Santatananiya Nasatoya, with the elements of earth and air and water and fire, Santankoya Nananiya, or the DNA, ATCG, Hanasoy Nananasita Naniya Noya, or other creation codes of sacred geometry, of light, of colors, of numbers. Sunkatana Sitania Nanania Nanya Noya. Everything at its base is energy, is light. Sunkatina Nana Satina Nanatuya Kaitinka Tanania Nanatia. And now we're bringing in the impulse of creation, Hanasita Nanania Moetiwa, and inviting you to bask in the impulse of creation as a creator being. Kandanina Sutonkatina Nana Sitanana. For as you are basking in the impulse of creation as a creator being, Kumano Sutuya, Nana Sutuya, Nananano Tuya Kantatinania, there's a filling up, Hui Santatina Nanania, a basking, Hananuya Kaitina Nanania, an overflowing, Hanasita Tania Nania Nuya, that there isn't a striving, a seeking, a separation, a forcing, Hanasika Tanania Nainia no Koya Manadia, yet there's actually Kumpatana Santania Nania, the impulse to create, Hasatuya Nanania. With this impulse to create, there is the field of infinite possibilities. Sankatuya Nanania Nanania. And so you may have a sensation of where you may have been in a finite possibility, Kanani Satana Soya Kantatina Nania, of that which is experienced as finite, being invited back into the wholeness, back in the oneness, back in the field of infinite possibilities. So Totuya Nanania Santatina Nania Muetankataya Nania. We're bringing in the energy of positioning. There's quite a lot happening here. So Tatania Nananoyantiwa, and inviting you to unpack it in the way that's most optimal to you. Satatina Nania Toya Koyashi. So with the positioning, it may be that what you have been choosing to actualize, Hakatana Nania Manatiwa Koyashitiwa Koyashi, came from outside of you, Koetina Naninia Nana Sutoya Kayatiwa Toya Katatia Nania, in a sense that it was an idea that sounds good, Hanatina Noya Tanka Toya, or you've seen others have it, and so you thought maybe it was something that you wanted to have. Satatina Nanania, or what your life should look like, Hanatina Nanania Noya Sanka Toyatina Nana Toya Kantatina Nana Sitiwa Koya, that isn't actually yours to be and do and have, nothing more, nothing less. And we speak about this in the tablets of light, that if what you're choosing to actualize is like connecting with somebody that's wearing a yellow shirt in a stadium, Hasatina Nania Noetiwa, of thousands and thousands and thousands of individuals, so to Kantatina Nania Noetiwa Koya, then it's like as you walk into the stadium, everyone else sits down, the individual in the yellow shirt stands up, and the camera zooms in on them and their seat number and exactly where they are. Tokampa tanko tana sitania nanania. So there's also, and we know that this is a choice, it's all a choice, and it may take courage. We'd also invite you to consider, to be willing to maybe one day start to perhaps ask and choose anything that's not yours to be and do and have, that it sits down. That which is stands up with absolute laser precision. You are in the same vibrational environment of that which is yours to be and do and have. Nothing more, nothing less. And there's a lot more that we could go into. Yet, because you are each very strong in your capacities with energy, we would invite you to tune in the higher realms to actualizing this. Hanatina nanania moikantanania nanatina Hanania Poya Satatina Satatia Kayatina Nania Nana. And then almost like you're in this building, let's say your building is reflective of you as a multidimensional being of light incarnate. And what you're choosing to actualize is a new house or connecting to the individual that you would be divine partners with, or finances, that then you're connecting to the energy of money in the 8th dimension, or you're connecting to the energy of money in the 15th dimension, or you're connecting to the energy of money in the 3rd dimension. You're connecting to money in divine wholeness as divine wholeness. And then it's no longer the needle that has to be threaded in a very small way. Koipantatina nananian toya kayatiwa. Satatai poya kanta toya sanka tainanania taya koyatana sitanania. Hoya sitania koya shitinia nana toya kaya. Samana soitina sandantatina nania. And then there's much more that's been transmitted and translated, yet inviting you to take a few breaths and to really tune into the perineum at the base of the spine, and maybe even pulsing the perineum a little bit and swallowing a few times to be connecting to the down direction of energy, that your system's naturally flowing up and flowing down. But for now, you're focusing on the down energy. Beautiful. And then the Venus ray of opulent bliss is also being placed on the altar. And then as we're completing this transmission, we would also invite you anywhere you're, how to say, like to open up to being surprised, to recognizing what it is that you are manifesting and actualizing already, to widen this needle in any way that you can, so that there really is the infinite possibilities. Because sometimes you may have a desire that you think you have for a certain reason, and you get focused on that one thing, that one thing, that one thing, that one thing, and then all you can see is that one thing not being there yet, or in the dimension that you're wanting it to be there in, and yet all around it is actually what it is that you've been asking for or desiring. Santa Toya Sata Tina Nanya Taya Kayati Satatoya Satatina Hanani Nananya Santa Kaya Haisita Nanya Nanya Nana. And there's a question about what's yours to be and do and have, nothing more, nothing less. And that's also based on your choice. It's not like what's yours to be and do and have, nothing more, nothing less, has already been decided, it's done. You are also choosing in each moment, by following the energy, to amplify what's yours to be and do and have, nothing more, nothing less. So we invite each of you to bring your awareness back, maybe wiggling your toes or rubbing your palms together. And then just letting the energies continue to ripple out. And as we're moving towards a place of completion, are there any additional questions or reflections that you may have?
May I ask about the Aquarian age unfolding, and where we might be as a collective consciousness here on the Earth Star, regarding the progression into the Aquarian age, sort of where we're at as a collective consensus.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very interesting question. For, as we kind of winked at earlier, there is an even greater variety of energies that are now available on a multidimensional level. And as such, there are many experiences that can be had within what you would call the same environment or energy location. So, unity consciousness, or the Aquarian age, has already happened, so to speak, like it's done, and there's much celebration about that. Yet the awakening to that is very much an individual process. Satatui sankanana kaitina nania kaitiwa. Satatui sankanui sammanuya nia nania nania. And so we know that the question was based on the collective, and as well based on all the now moments that have led up to the convergence of this hologram and the jumping of the dimensions, the Earth Star as well being more connected to the multiverses and this oneness, and what we call the divine expansion project of the divine expanding, and the shift from that which is unrealized to realized. And so that their full realization is there, and how and when the individual chooses to access that Aquarian age or that unity consciousness is unique to you. And so it's not, and we love that this is coming up as well, it's not like there's a better or worse. It's really what's yours to be and do and have, nothing more, nothing less. And if each individual was really claiming your place of what's yours to be and do and have, nothing more, nothing less, then there's an even greater awareness in what you could call the divine mind, or the collective consciousness. And we don't mean from the tribal level, yet we mean from the oneness level, the interconnectedness. So there's a lot of reorganization, repositioning, and we know that for some, duality is stronger than ever. For others, there are more and more moments of unity consciousness, yet how you experience that isn't the same as whether the Aquarian age has happened or unity consciousness has happened already or not. So we're distinguishing that a bit and also celebrating with you. And that's why we're here. That's why we're divinely partnering. And that's why more and more and more of you are also choosing divinely partner with us as beings of light incarnate, as beings of light and light. For there is more that we are unpacking and continuing in this evolution and consciousness.
May I ask a question about the transition into a higher dimensional reality and how that might look? So many have pondered whether this is a gradual awakening process, or whether there may be a full activation of the collective consciousness grid at once, and this happens in one divine in-breath.
Can you expand upon that?
We would say that it's both. And that is also the oneness, the inclusion. And we know that it's not that we're being evasive in the response, yet there's also the recognition of this multidimensional living being an absolute shift in perception and orientation almost. So we know that at times it can appear that you're like in the ocean, the middle of the ocean, without any horizon to give you an orientation of where you are, and that can be disorienting. And at the same time, there's the recognition and the awareness that multidimensional living is a shift from your experience of linear time and space into a beyond. And at the same time, there is so much of what you experience in your 3D lifetime, like being incarnated during separation consciousness and now living during unity consciousness, an overlap time, not that unity consciousness wasn't there when you incarnated, and that there can be this dismantling of the old identity and the recognition of the divine self. And so it can happen at a blink of an eye or an in-breath, and it can also be a reorientation point. And that's where we would call in the solar ray, the now ray, to invite you each to really be connecting to who it is that you become, to be current with who it is that you are, and also be tapping into that oracular vision that you each have that is about the quantum or beyond time and space. So one analogy that we often speak about is like if you're born 100 years ago, before there was a telephone, and somebody tells you about the telephone, but all you know is the people that live in your village, and maybe you know that you could send a telegram or even a letter, but it might take months and months and months and months and months for the correspondence to happen. To then flash forward 100 years, that the individual now may have a cell phone or access to the internet, that's a paradigm shift. And trying to explain the phone to someone who doesn't know what the phone is or isn't experiencing the phone, it's not as efficient as experiencing what the phone is. And the more there is and we have a sense, this is also what you're asking, is like, is there a critical mass that's building, or is there this tipping point that's happening as each individual awakens? And yes, and at the same time, it's still a unique journey. It's still happening individually. We speak about this in the chapter to Kamumbo in the Temples of Light book and the Divine Mind, that how before someone ran the 4-minute mile, it was like nobody ran the 4-minute mile. Then once somebody did, it seemed like everyone, or not everyone, yet many started doing it. So there is an aspect of the momentum that's being created that is like that. And some of you have been and continue to be the first to run the 4-minute mile. And that can feel disorienting because everyone around you is going, it's not possible, or we're not getting what you're doing there. And that's where your unique oracular vision is such a contribution to the whole. So we know again that it is a unique or individualized oneness that is also what we often share, that there is more to be garnered
from living in unity consciousness and love and abundance, co-creation and joy, than repeating another repetitive pattern of lack or scarcity or separation or fear. And yet there may still be more that you're choosing to garner from being in separation consciousness. And yet it may also be that you've actually gotten everything that there is from it, and you can now use it for rocket fuel.
I so appreciate that, and also the divine partnership. And I really want to take this opportunity to thank, with such sincere and deep gratitude, Thoth and the Path of Venus and the Ray beings of light and all of the members of the Councils of Light that are co-creating with humanity at this point in time. And I so appreciate, as do all of my spiritual brothers and sisters, and those who are awakening at this time as well, the divine partnership in this particular auspicious time where the veils are thin and we can reach out and ask for guidance and co-create. It's just such a beautiful time for all of that. And also, Danielle, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for dedicating your life to serving humanity and to partnering with Thoth and the Council of Light and all the beings that you bring in and bring through, and dedicating so much time to writing such beautiful books and making such activational YouTubes. I am truly grateful, as I am sure all of your fans and followers are.
Thank you. And it is not something that we could or would do without you. And so it is truly a divine partnership with a simultaneity in oneness of gifting and receiving.
Are there any last words of instruction or inspiration that you would like to offer myself and the wider spiritual community of pioneers and innovators? Anything that we could particularly be doing at this time?
Well, one aspect that can create greater ease in this awakening time is really being you fully and amplifying your unique signature energy. And we know that at the same time as it can actually be more ease filled and more grace filled, that there with that can be the necessity for evolution, is that which was once necessary that no longer is, and evolving into that which now is. So it may have been necessary to hide or to try to fit in or to try to cover your light, and yet that time has passed, and now is the time to be visible, to be willing to be your unique selves.
Wonderful. Well, many blessings to you, sweet dear Danielle. It is with such sincere gratitude and many blessings that I embrace this connection with you today.
And many blessings to you. Thank you.
And many blessings to all of you who have joined us today here on Lighten Up TV. And remember, live well, love life.